The Texas heat clung to Grant Whitaker's collar like a reminder. No matter how far you rise, the past doesn't evaporate. It waits. Quiet. Patient. And sometimes, it ambushes you on an ordinary afternoon. He stepped out of the black SUV into the slow hum of Austin's East Side, fresh off a keynote speech at the city's annual tech summit. Cameras had flashed, hands had shaken, applause had echoed. All of it hollow, like background music he barely noticed anymore. His custom navy blazer, untouched by the sun, clung to his frame with sharp, professional precision. On his wrist, a smartwatch pinged with a new message from Max, his COO back in Seattle. Another acquisition deal, another multi-million-dollar decision. Another item to fake enthusiasm about. He silenced the alert without looking. A few blocks away, the streets buzzed with weekend movement. Families crossing to the farmer's market, teens laughing over iced coffees, a toddler throwing a tantrum under a shaded bench. Grant adjusted his sunglasses. "I'll walk," he told the driver, slamming the door before the man could respond. The car rolled off, swallowed by traffic. He hadn't walked these streets in years, not since before Seattle, before boardrooms and billion-dollar app launches, before his face appeared in Forbes. Not since Claire. His shoes clicked against the concrete as he passed a familiar corner. The old bakery had turned into a yoga studio. The record shop next to it was gone, replaced by a frozen yogurt chain. Then he saw them. Outside the H-E-B grocery store across the street, a woman stood juggling paper bags and wrangling 3 small boys, all of them barefoot in the way only confident, chaotic 5-year-olds can be in the Texas summer. One was trying to fit his whole fist into a juice box straw. Another ran toward the bike rack yelling something about dinosaurs. The third clutched a worn toy airplane and stared upward, as if he could fly just by imagining hard enough. The woman turned, brushing her curls out of her eyes. Grant's chest seized. Claire. His feet froze mid-step. Time did that thing it does when life decides to swerve. It narrowed and sharpened, and made everything excruciatingly clear. It had been 6 years. 6 years since he'd walked out of her tiny apartment with promises to keep in touch and make this work, echoing like cheap lines from a script he no longer believed in. She hadn't changed much. Older, maybe. Her face softer in some places, more defined in others. But it was her. The same determined tilt of her jaw, the same fire in her movements. "Jude, no parking lot, please," she called, gripping one bag with her elbow as she pulled the child back. "Finn, honey, don't sit in the cart. It's dirty." "Miles, can you hold this?" Grant blinked. Jude. Finn. Miles. His gaze shifted. The boys were identical. Not just to each other, but to him. Same olive skin tone. Same dimpled chins, same sharp eyebrows and almond-shaped eyes. His knees weakened, and he reached for a nearby pole to steady himself. His mouth went dry. They weren't just kids, they were his kids. Claire hadn't seen him yet. She was too busy trying to open her phone with her pinky, presumably calling an Uber. He stepped forward. Then stopped. What was he going to say? "Hey. Sorry for ghosting you for 6 years. By the way, those look like my eyes on your children's faces." Grant's pulse thundered. "Mom," one of the boys said, Miles maybe, tugging at her shirt. "That man is staring at us." Claire turned. Their eyes met. She flinched, like someone punched the wind from her. A long, charged second passed. Her expression was unreadable. Shock, anger, fear, confusion, all dancing in quick succession. Her lips parted. "Grant?" His name landed heavy in the space between them. He started. "Hi." The moment stretched. brittle and cracking. She glanced at the boys, then back at him. Her arms tightened protectively around the grocery bags. "I need to go," she said quickly. "Come on, boys." "Claire, wait!" He took a step forward, hand half raised, unsure of what he was even reaching for. She backed away. "Please don't." "Are they—" His throat constricted. "Are they mine?" Her eyes flickered with something sharp. "That's a conversation for another time." And then, just like that, she turned. She guided the boys away, flagging down a ride-share that pulled up at the curb. The boys climbed in, loud and curious. Claire looked back once, just once, her face unreadable. Then the car pulled away. And Grant Whitaker, self-made millionaire, keynote speaker, and genius founder of one of the top tech startups on the West Coast, stood in a H-E-B parking lot, frozen like a man who'd just seen a ghost. Except the ghost was real. And it had his eyes. He didn't remember walking back to his hotel or dismissing calls from investors or ignoring the text from Max asking if he was alive. What he remembered was the look on Claire's face. The disbelief, the pain, the shield she raised the second she saw him. That night, he didn't go to the industry mixer. He sat in his hotel suite with the lights off, laptop open, searching for her. Claire Donovan. No public social media, no LinkedIn, no recent mentions online. But he knew her well enough to guess. She would have stayed near her sister, Lydia. That house in East Austin with the white fence and the garden gnome shaped like a frog. He'd hated that gnome. He found a city directory, found the address. The last name still matched. A single tear rolled down his cheek before he realized he was crying. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. She'd raised 3 boys alone. While he was jet-setting between cities, cutting deals, smiling for press photos, she was wiping up spills, working night shifts, telling bedtime stories without help. He'd walked out thinking he was making the noble sacrifice, choosing ambition over a relationship that at the time felt too complicated to carry. But those boys, they weren't complications. They were miracles. And he'd missed every moment of their lives. The room felt colder than it was. Outside, the lights of Austin glittered, oblivious. He pulled out his phone. No calls this time, no emails, just a message. 2. Max canceled the Napa investor meeting. I'm staying in Austin. He put the phone down. Tomorrow, he would knock on her door. Tomorrow, he would ask for the truth. And maybe, just maybe, he'd start the long, hard work of becoming the man he should have been all along. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Grant hadn't knocked on a door in years with his heart in his throat. The next morning, he stood outside a modest 1-story home, tucked behind a low iron fence on a quiet street in East Austin. A tricycle lay sideways near the porch. A wind chime tinkled gently in the breeze. It was the kind of neighborhood where people remembered your name, borrowed sugar, watered their lawns at sunset. So different from the high-rise anonymity he was used to in Seattle. He checked the address again. The Donovan house. Claire's sister still lived here. And if last night's online breadcrumbs were accurate, so did Claire. His knuckles hovered over the faded blue door. He hesitated. What if she slammed it in his face? What if the boys answered? What if... The door opened before he touched it. Claire stood there. No makeup. Hair tied back. Wearing a worn Keep Austin Weird t-shirt and leggings. Her eyes narrowed the instant she saw him. I was hoping you'd at least call first. I didn't have your number, he said quietly. She didn't respond right away. Her expression hardened. "And you thought showing up at my front door would fix that?" "No," he said. "Nothing about this is a fix. I need to talk to you." A pause. Then, without a word, she stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind her. She crossed her arms. "You have 5 minutes." "I don't deserve that much," he said, voice low. "But thank you." Claire glanced toward the side yard where muffled laughter echoed from behind the fence. The boys were outside, likely under Aunt Lydia's watch. She didn't want them seeing this. Grant followed her gaze. "They're beautiful," he said. "All 3 of them." "Don't. I'm not trying to—" "Grant," she cut in, her voice tightening. "You don't get to say they're beautiful like you've known them. You don't know what Finn does when he's scared or how Miles hums when he reads. You don't know that Jude's allergic to strawberries. You don't even know their birthdays." Each sentence landed heavier than the last. He swallowed. "You're right." Claire exhaled, steadying herself. "Why are you here?" "I don't know. When I saw you yesterday, and I saw them, Claire, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Her eyes flashed. "I tried to tell you." "What?" "I called. I left messages. I sent emails to every address you'd ever given me. I even mailed a letter to your company's office when the emails bounced back. But you had cut me off so cleanly, I might as well have been erased." Grant's breath caught. "I thought it would be easier. For both of us. You said you didn't want to do long distance. You thought I'd move on," she finished for him. "And maybe I would have. Maybe. But then I found out I was pregnant. And I was scared and alone and furious." Her voice cracked. "Just slightly. Enough to expose the years of holding everything in. I was still packing when I found out," she said. "Still had your old t-shirt in my drawer." He looked down, ashamed. "I don't know what to say." She shook her head. "It's not about what you say, Grant. It's what you do. You've built an empire. I saw you on the cover of Fast Company. You're a tech legend now. But when it came to the hard part, the messy part, you vanished." Grant felt like every molecule of oxygen had left the porch. "I don't want to vanish anymore." Claire studied him. Not softened, not swayed, but curious now. Wary. "They're 5, she said. "You've missed everything. I want to be part of what's next." "And what exactly is that?" she asked. "You drop in with apologies and think you can just be their father now?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "I just want to try, to show them, and you, that I'm not the man I was." Claire's jaw clenched. "You want a clean slate? I want a second chance." A long silence stretched between them. The kind that could tip either way with one wrong breath. Then the door creaked open behind them. A woman in her early 40s, short gray-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her head, stepped out, drying her hands on a towel. "Aunt Lydia." She raised an eyebrow when she saw him. Well. The prodigal genius. Claire closed her eyes. "Lydia, please." "I'm just saying," Lydia shrugged. "If this one's gonna stand here making amends, you might as well let him finish before the heat knocks him out." Grant gave a respectful nod. "Hi, Lydia." "Don't hi me like it hasn't been 6 years," she snapped, then paused. "You hungry?" He blinked. What?" "We're making grilled cheese." "Finn's on a dairy kick, and I don't believe in arguing on an empty stomach." Claire exhaled in disbelief. "Let him eat," Lydia said. "If he sticks around long enough to scrub dishes, we'll talk." Then she walked back inside. Claire looked at Grant. Her mouth curled slightly. a reluctant smirk beneath the frustration. "She's impossible," she muttered. Grant gave a half-smile. "I've missed her." Claire didn't say anything. But after a long beat, she opened the door. "Come in. But you're not meeting them today." "Not yet." He nodded, grateful. "Of course." As he stepped into the house, the scent of melted cheese and sunscreen filled the air. Toys lined the hallway. A child's drawing of what looked like a rocket ship hung on the wall, scrawled in crayon. "To Mom, love Jude, Miles, Finn." Grant's eyes lingered on it for a moment. Something behind his ribs shifted. He'd built a world of code and capital, but this was a world of crayon rockets and sticky countertops. He followed Claire down the hallway, and for the first time in years, Grant Whitaker walked into a room where the rules weren't written by shareholders but by love, sacrifice, and the kind of resilience only a mother could teach. And suddenly the stakes were no longer about legacy. They were about belonging. The kitchen was smaller than Grant remembered, but warmer. Sunlight filtered through the window above the sink, catching the floating dust in lazy beams. A tower of sippy cups stood drying beside the faucet. The fridge was covered in magnetic letters, chore charts, and uneven artwork taped in layers. Grant stood just inside the doorway, his hands still by his sides, like he didn't want to touch anything. Claire moved across the space like it was a stage she knew better than her own skin. She opened a drawer without looking, pulled out plates. Lydia flipped a grilled cheese onto one and slid it across the counter. "You're lucky," Lydia said without looking at him. "Finn made the mistake of letting me cook last week." "Kid still won't touch scrambled eggs," Grant offered a polite smile. "He sounds picky." "He's not," Claire replied, flat. "He's cautious." Lydia raised a brow but said nothing. The silence that followed was layered. Comfort for them, tension for him. Grant sat when Claire motioned to a stool. The counter wobbled slightly under his forearms. "So," Lydia said, stirring a pot on the stove, "let's get this out of the way. Are you back in Austin for good, or is this one of those soul-searching drop-ins before you return to your tech throne?" "I don't know yet," Grant admitted. "I was here for the summit. I hadn't planned on staying longer, but now I can't imagine leaving without understanding what I missed." Claire leaned against the sink, arms crossed. "What you missed is 5 birthdays. Dozens of doctor visits, midnight fevers, school tours. Christmases with dollar store lights and 3 boys asking why their dad's not in the picture." He winced. "I deserve that." "No, Grant," she said, eyes flashing. "You don't deserve anything." That's the point. The room froze for a second. Even the sizzling from the pan seemed quieter. He nodded slowly, breathing through the weight of it. "Then I'll earn it." Lydia glanced over her shoulder. "Earning takes time, sugar. It's not a pitch deck you perfect in one night." "I'm not here to pitch," he said softly. "I'm here to show up, if you'll let me." Claire's eyes didn't leave his. She was studying him, dissecting the man in front of her like she was trying to find the outline of the boy she used to love underneath it all. "You built an empire, Grant," she said. "But I had to build a life." "I know." "No, you don't," she replied. "You say that like it's a slogan. But while you were shaking hands with venture capitalists, I was washing baby bottles at 2 a.m. and wondering how I'd buy diapers without overdrafting." Grant's fingers curled around the edge of the stool. "I want to help now." Claire blinked. "With what?" "Money? With whatever you'll let me offer," he said. "Time. Support. Stability. A father." The last word landed hard. Claire looked down, biting the inside of her cheek. "I don't want them confused," she said quietly. They know what a father is from cartoons and school books, but they've never had to live the reality of that word. I want to give them that reality. And what if you get bored? Her eyes snapped back to his. What if a month from now you're back on a plane and this becomes just another story you don't finish? I'm not going anywhere. You always go somewhere, Grant, she said, voice rising. That's who you've always been, a person in motion. Always running towards something. Success, status, headlines. But family isn't a destination. He stood then, not to argue, but because his body couldn't bear sitting through the weight of it. I've changed, he said. At least I'm trying to. I thought I had everything. But when I saw you, I realized how empty it all felt. The silence returned. Denser now, Claire exhaled, not a sigh. Not quite forgiveness, but a slow letting go of her shoulders, like she didn't have the strength to hold every wall up at once. Lydia clapped her hands suddenly. All right, that's enough vulnerability for one morning. We've got grilled cheese getting cold, and I'm not letting emotions ruin lunch. Claire gave her sister a look, but grabbed 2 plates and began setting them down at the table. I made enough for the boys, Lydia said, handing Grant a 3rd plate. You can drop these by the backyard on your way out. Don't talk to them. Don't hover. Just leave the food and let them be. Grant nodded. He took the plate, his hand shaking a little. Thank you. She held his gaze. Don't make me regret it. He stepped through the back door and into the warmth of the yard. A small plastic slide gleamed in the sun. A kiddie pool sat deflated in the corner, and under the shade of a crooked oak tree, 3 boys sat cross-legged on a blanket, piecing together a Lego set. He watched them for a moment, breath lodged in his throat. Jude was talking fast, clearly the ringleader. Miles methodically sorted pieces. Finn sat apart, twisting a single red block in his hand, eyes distant. Grant stepped quietly across the lawn and placed the plate on the edge of the picnic table. Grilled cheese, courtesy of Lydia, he said gently, not expecting a response. Jude glanced up. Thanks, he said quickly, then turned back to the Lego ship. Miles looked at him longer, then nodded slowly. Finn didn't look at all. Grant stood there, unsure. He started to turn back toward the house, but then he heard it, soft and small. Do you live here now? Finn asked, still not meeting his eyes. Grant froze. No, buddy, he said quietly. Not yet. Finn nodded. Once, then kept twisting the block. It was the smallest exchange. Barely a ripple, but to Grant, it felt like a door had cracked open. He walked back inside, his chest tight. Claire was already clearing the counter but paused when he entered. They asked if you lived here, he said, still standing in the doorway. She didn't turn. What did you say? The truth, he said. Not yet. She didn't smile, but she didn't correct him either. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Grant stood in the kitchen long after Claire had gone upstairs. The quiet pressed in around him, broken only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional distant laugh from the backyard. He glanced at the plate he'd left on the counter. The crusts from the grilled cheese picked clean, except for one untouched triangle. Finn's, probably. The kid barely touched his food, and yet his eyes had asked a question no one else had dared to. Do you live here now? It had taken everything in Grant not to answer with a yes, but that would have been a lie. And lies were part of the reason he was standing here as a stranger in the house that should have been his home. He moved to the doorway, watching Claire through the screen door. She stood in the yard now, backlit by the late sun, helping Jude untangle a garden hose that had looped itself around the edge of the sandbox. Her laugh drifted faintly toward him, real, unguarded, and it knocked the wind out of him. He used to know that laugh. Not the polite chuckle she gave him now in conversation, but that deep, belly-shaking laugh that only came when she forgot the weight on her shoulders. He hadn't heard it in years, and yet there it was, spilling across the lawn like music he hadn't realized he missed. Claire turned suddenly and caught him staring. Her face didn't harden this time, but it didn't soften either. It just settled into something neutral, unreadable. She gave a quick wave to the boys and walked toward him. "You planning to lurk, or are you coming out?" Grant opened the door and stepped onto the back patio. "Just observing." "Feels more like ghosting in reverse," she said. "You vanish for years, then appear in corners." He gave her a tight smile. "I'm not used to being the one on the outside." "Well," Claire said, "that's the price of walking away." He nodded. There was nothing to say to that. She wasn't wrong. She folded her arms. "So, what now, Grant?" "You keep showing up with your eyes all soft and your voice low like you're trying not to spook us. But the boys don't need you to tiptoe. They need to know if you're actually here. For real. For them." "I want to be," he said. "Then stop saying it like it's a wish," she snapped. "Say it like it's a decision." Grant's voice was steady. "I'm not leaving, Claire. Not again." She stared at him. Really stared, like she was looking for cracks. And then, slowly, she sat on the steps and looked out at the yard. "Finn still watches the sky before bed," she said. "He thinks there's something out there he hasn't figured out yet. Miles won't sleep unless the books on his shelf are in alphabetical order. Jude thinks he's the fastest runner in the world and cries every time he loses." Grant sat beside her, leaving a respectful space between them. "They sound amazing." "They are," she said softly. "They're also exhausting. They argue over crayons. They talk in their sleep. They eat like tiny monsters and leave crumbs in every corner of this house. And every single day, I worry I'm not enough for them." Her voice cracked at the edges, and for the first time, Grant saw it. Really saw it. The fatigue beneath her fire, the loneliness behind her strength. The weight she carried like armor. "You shouldn't have had to do this alone," he said. She let the silence hang before answering. "No, I shouldn't have." They sat that way for a long time, watching the boys play until the sky dimmed into soft lavender and the first street lamp blinked to life. Claire stood first. "I've got work tomorrow," she said. "Evening shift at the library, then a couple of delivery runs. Lydia'll watch the boys." Grant stood too. "Can I help?" She raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "Anything," he said. "Dinner, bedtime." "Rides. I can show up." "You want to put them to bed?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Because that's a 2-hour marathon that ends in at least one meltdown and someone needing a very specific stuffed animal from under the couch." "I'm not afraid of chaos," he said. Claire smiled, faint but real. "Okay then, tomorrow night." Grant blinked. "Really? You said you wanted to help. Here's your shot." He nodded. "I'll be here." She turned to go back inside, then paused. "Grant?" "Yeah?" Her voice was quieter now. "Don't promise what you can't deliver. Not to them." "Not again." He nodded, heart heavy. "I won't." She disappeared inside, calling to the boys to clean up. Grant stood on the porch a little longer, the hum of crickets beginning to rise, the air thick with heat and something else. Possibility. Back in the hotel that night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark, staring at a photo on his phone. It was nothing more than a blurry snapshot he'd taken through the screen door. A moment of Jude mid-laugh, Miles frowning in concentration, and Finn watching the clouds. He stared at it like it was the most valuable thing he owned. And maybe it was. Because no company, no stock price, no trophy on a shelf could compare to the way it felt when Finn asked him a question. When Claire didn't shut the door, this wasn't about redemption anymore. It was about earning his place in their lives. Not with words, but with presence. Tomorrow he'd be back. And this time, he wouldn't just bring a plate. He'd bring the version of himself he'd never dared become, until now. The front porch light buzzed quietly overhead as Grant stood holding a paper bag full of takeout containers and 3 identical boxes wrapped in brown paper. His heart beat harder than it had before any investor pitch or televised interview. Tonight wasn't about performance. It was about presence. And presence, he was learning, had no shortcuts. Claire opened the door before he knocked. Her hair was damp, pulled back from her face. She wore a plain blue t-shirt and pajama pants with tiny planets on them. "You're late," she said. He held up the bag. "Traffic. And I had to detour to get the green curry you said they liked." Claire eyed the food, surprised. "I barely mentioned that." "I listen now." A flicker of something passed through her expression. Maybe approval, maybe hesitation. She stepped aside. "They're in the living room. Good luck." He followed the sounds of chaos into a whirlwind of pillows, crayons, and barefoot negotiations over who got the shiny blanket. Jude was mid-jump from the couch armrest. Miles sat cross-legged, coloring a page half-filled with scribbles that clearly followed a precise logic only he understood. Finn lay on his stomach under the coffee table, humming to himself. "Whoa," Grant said, stepping inside. "Looks like a hurricane came through here." 3 heads turned. "Hi," Jude said, not pausing in his bounce. "You brought food?" Miles tilted his head. "You came back." Finn didn't move. Grant set the bag on the coffee table and crouched next to Finn. "Hey there, got something for you." He placed one of the boxes gently in front of him. It had a small green sticker with a single word: Explore. Finn peeked at it, cautious. "Model rocket kit," Grant whispered. "Thought you might like it." Claire leaned in from the hallway, watching quietly, her arms crossed, unreadable. Grant pulled the other boxes from the bag and handed them to the twins. "For you, Jude. Racing cars that you build yourself." "And Miles, books on constellations and a flashlight projector." Miles beamed. "With constellations? Every major one in the northern hemisphere." Claire's expression shifted just slightly. Her mouth tightened, but her eyes softened. "You don't have to bribe them," she said. "I'm not," he replied, turning to her. "I'm trying to know them." Claire didn't argue. She just nodded toward the clock. "They've got 45 minutes before bed. That's your window." Grant glanced at the couch, then back at the boys. "All right, how about a deal? Pajamas, teeth brushed, and we build 1 toy before bedtime." "Only one?" Jude asked, disappointed. "It's a school night," Claire added from the hallway. Jude groaned but didn't push back. 20 minutes later, the 3 boys, now in mismatched pajamas and slightly wet from their haphazard teeth brushing, sat around Grant on the living room rug. The model rocket lay unboxed, pieces scattered. "Instructions?" Grant asked. Finn handed them over without a word. The boys watched as he fumbled with the parts, clearly struggling. Claire leaned against the doorway, arms still folded. "Step 3 says you connected it backward," Finn mumbled. Grant squinted. "You sure?" Finn silently flipped the page and pointed. "All right then, engineer. Grant said, grinning. Let's do it your way. Finn didn't smile, but he slid closer. As the rocket slowly took shape, Grant looked up and saw Claire watching. Her face had changed again, less guarded, more thoughtful. Like she was remembering something that made her feel too much all at once. You used to do this with me, he said softly, eyes still on the rocket. What? She asked. Stand in the hallway and watch. You'd pretend you weren't interested, but you couldn't look away. Claire didn't answer, but she didn't walk off either. The rocket stood completed, wobbly but whole. Finn touched its side gently like it might lift off. Can we launch it tomorrow? He asked, almost whispering. If your mom says yes, Grant replied. Finn looked to Claire. She gave a small nod. In the park. After school. Finn lit up. Barely, but Grant caught it. Bedtime was more difficult. Jude insisted on a story that didn't exist. Miles wanted his stars reorganized on the ceiling projector, and Finn refused to go to bed without the rocket on his shelf. They eventually gave in, yawning between objections. Grant tucked them in slowly, one by one. As he pulled Finn's blanket up, the boy looked at him, eyes tired but searching. You know how to fly one? Finn asked. A rocket? Finn nodded. I've never tried, Grant said. Finn stared at the ceiling. I think you should. I think I should too. Claire met him in the hallway as he stepped out. She closed the boy's door gently behind him. You survived, she said. He exhaled, smiling. Barely. You didn't have to go all out. I wanted to. She walked past him into the kitchen. He followed, unsure if he was overstaying his welcome. She poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter. I'm not used to this, she said. You. Being here. I'm not used to it either. Claire stared into her glass. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I wrote your number down on a napkin and held it for 3 days before I could call. You didn't answer. Grant's face fell. I was in Tokyo. My number changed. I didn't even think to. You didn't want to think, she interrupted, not angry now, just tired. You knew I wanted roots. You wanted sky. He swallowed. I'm trying to change that. You've said that. I'll keep saying it until you believe me. Claire studied him, her eyes flicking between his and something further away, something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. They like you, she said. I like them, he answered. And me? The words surprised him. She didn't blink. He stepped closer, cautiously. More than ever. Claire didn't move, didn't flinch, but her next breath came slower. Deeper. Then she stepped back. Good night, Grant. He nodded. Good night, Claire. He let himself out, quietly closing the door behind him. In the dark, standing under the porch light again, he looked up at the night sky. No boardroom. No deadline, no noise, just stars. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man in motion. He felt like a man finally standing still, exactly where he was meant to be. Grant showed up at 2:58 p.m., parked one street over from Claire's house so he wouldn't crowd the driveway. He didn't knock right away. He just sat behind the wheel of the rental, watching the minute hand crawl toward 3. He had never waited outside a school pickup line or memorized dismissal times, but now he knew them like gospel. 3:05 for Jude, Miles, and Finn. 5 minutes that suddenly mattered more than 5 years of boardroom milestones. Claire stepped out of the house, car keys in hand, ponytail still damp from her afternoon shower. She looked tired, but less guarded, like she'd slept, but not deeply, like she was still learning how to relax with him nearby. You're early, she said, sliding on her sunglasses. I figured being late might disqualify me for dad duty. She cracked a smile. You figured right. They drove in silence for a while, the hum of the road and the air conditioner filling the space between them. Grant kept glancing at her hands on the steering wheel. He remembered those hands from 100 moments, tying her hair back in college, holding a cup of gas station coffee on long road trips, gripping his shirt when they used to dance in the living room just for the hell of it. You always drive this fast? He asked, watching the speedometer climb. Claire didn't look over. I have 3 kids. If I don't get to that line by 3:10, it's a mini revolution. Grant laughed. Fair. When they pulled into the school parking lot, Claire pointed toward a shaded section near the gym. You can stand over there if you want. They always look that way first. Grant followed her lead, standing just outside the gate with a cluster of other parents. Moms in leggings, dads in polos, a couple of grandparents. It felt strange, like stepping into someone else's life, and realizing it should have been his all along. The bell rang. The door swung open. Jude came out first, backpack slipping off one shoulder, scanning the crowd with the intensity of a general. When he saw Grant, his face lit up. Hey. You're here again! Grant crouched slightly, arms out. Jude ran into him with full trust, full weight. Wouldn't miss it, Grant said, hugging him tight. Miles followed, holding Finn's hand. Both boys slowed when they spotted Grant. Miles gave a tiny wave. Finn didn't, but he didn't look away either. Grant rose as they reached him. How was school? Boring, Jude said immediately, except I won the math challenge. He guessed, Miles corrected. It was a fluke. Claire arrived behind them. Buckle up, critics. You're all brilliant. Finn finally spoke. Can we go to the park now? Grant smiled. Absolutely. At the park, they found a quiet patch of open grass under a wide oak tree. The rocket kit sat in the trunk, waiting. Grant retrieved it like it was a sacred object. You sure about this? He asked Claire as he laid out the launch pad and small air pump. She shrugged. You break it, you rebuild it. That's the deal. Life motto, he muttered. Claire sat on a bench a few feet away while the boys gathered around. Grant crouched beside them, explaining the steps, letting them each take turns locking the pieces in place. He didn't rush. He didn't take over. He let them lead. When the moment came, Finn stepped forward. He glanced at Grant, then at the red launch button. You do it, Grant said softly. Finn hesitated, then pressed. The rocket burst into the air with a sharp hiss and soared, spinning high above the tree line. The boys shouted. Jude jumped like he could chase it. Miles clapped. Finn just stood still, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. When it finally came down, it landed somewhere beyond the path, crashing gently into the bushes. I'll get it, Jude yelled, already sprinting. Grant turned to Finn, kneeling beside him. What did you think? Finn didn't answer right away. Then, in a whisper, it flew higher than I thought. So will you, Grant said. One day. Finn looked at him. Really looked. Then, so quickly Grant almost missed it, he reached out and took his hand, just for a second, then let go. Claire saw it. She didn't move, but her fingers tightened around her coffee cup, and her eyes didn't blink for a while. Later that evening, they all went back to the house. The boys buzzed with post-park energy, retelling the launch like it was a NASA mission. Are you staying for dinner? Claire asked, arms full of backpacks and lunch boxes. If I'm allowed. She looked at him, her face unreadable again. Sure, but you're on dish duty. Deal. Dinner was chicken nuggets, sweet potato fries, and carrot sticks arranged like smiley faces on plastic plates. The boys devoured them with zero complaints. Claire and Grant sat at the end of the table, sharing a grown-up plate of reheated stir-fry. Lydia arrived halfway through, kicking off her shoes and tossing her tote onto the bench. "I see the rocket didn't set off a neighborhood watch," she said, grabbing a nugget from Jude's plate. "Only because Grant read the instructions," Claire replied without sarcasm. Lydia raised an eyebrow. "Look at you, following directions. Is that personal growth?" "Painfully so," Grant said. After dinner, while the boys argued over which pajamas were the softest, Grant took over the sink. He washed quietly, focused, like each dish was part of his penance. Claire dried. She didn't speak for a while. Then, as she passed him a plate, she asked, "Why now?" He looked at her, suds dripping from his hands. "What do you mean? You've had 5 years. What made you stop running?" He rinsed, set the plate down. "I saw you." She waited. "I saw you with them. The way you moved. The way they followed your rhythm. It hit me harder than anything ever has. I realized I'd spent my life chasing things that don't matter. But that moment, that 1 second, felt like everything I've ever wanted." Claire blinked slowly. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. "You left without knowing. You're trying to come back knowing too much. Both are dangerous." He dried his hands. "I'll learn. With you." "With them. If you let me." She didn't answer. She just stood there, holding the towel, staring at the dish in her hand like it was suddenly heavy. Grant stepped back, giving her space. "I'll head out." She nodded. "Thanks for today." As he moved toward the door, a small voice called from the hallway. "Wait." Finn appeared in his rocket pajamas, holding something behind his back. Grant crouched. "Hey, buddy." "What's up?" Finn stepped forward and placed something in his hand. A drawing, crumpled and soft. It was a picture of the rocket flying above a house. 4 stick figures stood underneath. Claire, Jude, Miles, and a 4th, just a little taller. Holding Finn's hand, Grant's breath caught. "I made it for you," Finn said. Grant looked up at Claire. She was still holding the dish, but this time she was smiling. Not wide, not easy, but real. The morning air in Austin was soft and heavy, like the sky hadn't quite decided what kind of day it wanted to be. Grant sat on the back porch with a mug of coffee Claire had made without asking, as if, for just this once, it made sense for him to be there. Inside, the boys were arguing over whose turn it was to pick the music in the car on the way to school. Lydia's voice cut through the noise like a conductor trying to rein in an orchestra. Claire stepped out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her hair was still wet from the shower, dark curls pulled into a loose bun. She looked at him, then at the sky. "You staying long today?" He took a sip of the coffee. "No meetings until this afternoon." "Figured I'd walk with you to drop them off?" She raised an eyebrow. "They'll ask questions." "I hope so." Claire sighed and leaned against the railing beside him. "I don't know what this is." "I don't either," he admitted. "But it feels like the start of something." Her eyes scanned his face. "You know they've already started expecting you." "I want them to." She looked down at her hands, then back at the boys inside who were now dancing wildly in mismatched socks. "You're good with them," she said. "Better than I thought you'd be." "I'm good with what I missed," he replied. "But I've got a lot to learn." She looked at him again, softer now. "You're really not going back to Seattle yet, are you?" "I'm here," he said. "As long as it takes." Claire didn't answer, but she didn't challenge it either. Later, after the boys were dropped off, Jude waving dramatically, Miles reminding Finn to bring back the right library book, and Finn offering a quick glance back at Grant that almost resembled a goodbye. Claire and Grant walked back to the house in quiet. The sidewalk felt different now. Familiar, but layered. Like the past and present were learning how to coexist. Grant broke the silence first. "Can I ask you something?" Claire shrugged. "You're already walking next to me, might as well." "Where's your family? I mean, besides Lydia." Claire hesitated, then adjusted her tote bag on her shoulder. "My parents retired to a cabin in Colorado a few years back. They help when they can, but it's mostly phone calls and gift cards for birthdays. Lydia stepped in when things got hard. She stayed when most people didn't. She's tough," Grant said. "She had to be. For me." "For the boys," Grant nodded. "She likes me less than she lets on." "She doesn't hate you," Claire said. "She just knows what it looks like when someone disappoints the people they love. She spent years cleaning up after the damage. I don't blame her for keeping her guard up." Grant slowed his steps. "And you?" She stopped walking. "I haven't decided yet." He turned to her. "Fair." They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the silence speak. Then Claire cleared her throat. "What about your family?" Grant looked down the street as if the answer might be easier to find there. "My dad's still in San Antonio. Retired judge. Stubborn. Keeps his world small." "And your mom?" "Gone," he said quietly. "When I was 15, Claire's gaze softened. I didn't know that. I don't talk about her much." A pause. "She was the opposite of my dad. Warm. Creative. Made everything feel possible. When she died, he turned everything off. And I followed him. I didn't know how else to cope." Claire nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I didn't mean to turn off when I left you," he added. "I thought I was doing what I had to do. That ambition was the point." "And now?" she asked. "Now I see that it cost me everything I didn't know I wanted." Claire blinked, holding back something behind her expression. "Maybe frustration, maybe understanding, maybe both." They reached the house and stood at the front steps. "I've got work at the library this afternoon," she said, "and Lydia's got an appointment, so I can pick them up." Claire hesitated. "You sure?" He nodded. "I've already added it to my calendar." Claire unlocked the door. "If you're late, Jude will never forgive you." "Then I won't be late." Inside, Lydia looked up from the kitchen table where she was sorting bills. She didn't say anything, just raised an eyebrow like she was watching a movie she didn't trust, but couldn't stop following. Claire disappeared down the hallway, and Grant walked over to the table. "Morning," he said. Lydia sipped her tea. "So what's this now? Dad for a day turned into Dad for a week." "Maybe longer," he said. Lydia studied him. "You're here now, I'll give you that. But you keep showing up like a man who hasn't figured out where he belongs." Grant leaned on the back of the chair across from her. "I'm starting to think where I belong is right here." "Don't say that if you don't mean it," Lydia said, not unkindly. "Because those boys, Claire, they're finally steady. You shake that loose again, I won't be so polite next time." Grant nodded. Understood. Lydia stood and grabbed her keys. "Pickup's at 3:05. Don't be cute and think it's 3:10. I'll be there early." She walked past him, pausing at the door. "Finn left you something on the fridge." After she left, Grant walked over. Taped beside a construction paper dinosaur was a folded piece of lined notebook paper. Crayoned letters spelled Grant on the front. He opened it slowly. Inside, stick figures again. This time, all four of them sitting on the grass, the rocket soaring overhead. But this time, Finn had drawn a sun in the sky. And underneath the picture were 3 words, spelled awkwardly but clear. You came back. Grant pressed the paper to his chest, then rested it against the fridge. He didn't need to be told what it meant. He already knew. It meant stay. It meant try. It meant don't mess this up. And for once in his life, Grant Whitaker had no intention of leaving anything unfinished. The classroom door creaked open, and a wave of young voices spilled out, all tangled in backpacks, half-zipped jackets, and squeaky sneakers. Grant stood near the pickup line, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning. 3:04. He spotted Jude first, sprinting out like it was a race. Miles followed behind, hugging a book to his chest. Finn came last, holding the straps of his backpack tightly, eyes moving slower, more careful. Grant raised a hand. "Hey, crew!" Jude ran up and skidded to a stop. "You're on time." "I was early." Miles handed him a folded paper. "My teacher said I should give you this." Grant took it, scanning the note quickly. Miles had been invited to a science enrichment group. His chest swelled with quiet pride. Finn stopped in front of him but didn't speak. "Hey, Finn," Grant said gently. "How was your day?" Finn shrugged. "Okay," but his voice had a dip in it, like something was off. Grant knelt to his level. "You sure?" Finn didn't meet his eyes. "We made drawings today. Mine wasn't good." "I doubt that." Finn pulled out a crumpled paper and handed it over. It was a rocket, colored in with bold black lines and a crooked sun. A small figure stood alone at the bottom. "No one liked it," he said. Grant studied it for a beat, then looked back at him. "I like it." "Really?" "Absolutely. That sun? Looks like it's ready to light the whole world." Finn's mouth twitched like he might smile. Grant stood, clapping his hands. "All right, gentlemen, let's head home." But as they crossed the parking lot, his phone buzzed. He hesitated. "Claire?" he answered. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she replied, voice tight. "Can you bring them to the library? Now?" "I forgot my charger, and the boys have a book return due today." "We close early because of the staff meeting." "Sure. We're on the way." 15 minutes later, they pulled into the lot of the Austin Public Library branch. Claire stood out front, near the return slot, hair pinned back, cardigan sleeves pushed up. She looked tired and stressed. Grant walked the boys up. "Mission, book return, complete." Claire gave a grateful nod. "Thanks." "I owe you." Jude tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, can we look at the Lego books again?" "We don't have time today," she said, "but maybe tomorrow." "I'll take them inside," Grant offered. Claire hesitated. "I'll stay close," he said. "Promise." She gave him a long look, then nodded. Inside, the boys ran straight to the kids' section. Grant followed, grabbing a picture book off the shelf and sitting in the tiny reading nook. The boys huddled close, half listening, half wriggling. From the front desk, Claire watched through the glass. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. After they returned home, Claire stepped into the kitchen, while Grant helped the boys wash up. Dinner was leftovers. Again, but no one complained. The boys devoured pasta like it was a feast. Grant helped refill water cups and wipe spills without being asked. It all felt normal. Too normal. That's when Claire dropped it. "I got offered a second job." Grant froze, hand midair over a napkin. "Another one?" She nodded. "Evenings, at a community center." "Admin work. It's decent pay." He set the napkin down. "Claire, I'm not asking for permission, she said. I'm telling you what's happening. I know, he said carefully. But why? Because we need it. Rent goes up in January. The boys are growing. Miles needs glasses. Finn might need speech therapy. I can help. She laughed once, short and sharp. You are helping by picking them up. That's more valuable than your credit card right now. He didn't move. You shouldn't have to run yourself into the ground. And I shouldn't have had to raise them alone, she said, setting down her fork. But that didn't stop the bills from coming. Silence. Lydia stepped in from the hallway, having clearly heard too much. Everything all right? She asked. Fine, Claire said quickly. Grant stood. I should go. Claire nodded, eyes fixed on her plate. As he walked toward the door, Finn called out from the hallway. Grant? He turned. Yeah, buddy. Finn held up his rocket drawing. You can keep it. Grant blinked. Thank you. Claire stood and followed him to the porch. Outside, the night air was cooler. The porch light flickered. She leaned against the rail, arms folded tight. I didn't mean to snap, she said. I don't know how to let someone else carry the weight without waiting for them to drop it. Grant leaned beside her. I don't blame you. She looked over at him. I'm tired, Grant. Not just physically. It's like I've been holding my breath for 5 years. He swallowed. Let me help you exhale. Her eyes searched his face. I can't promise I won't get scared, she whispered. Then I'll wait through the fear. Claire blinked, tears barely held back. You're saying all the right things. Because I finally know what they mean. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Good night, Grant. He nodded. Good night, Claire. He stepped off the porch, but this time he didn't look back. Because maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to anymore. Grant stared at the email on his laptop screen, blinking against the afternoon light spilling through the window of the co-working space downtown. His team had sent over the updated expansion plan for Seattle. More floor space, a talent acquisition budget double what he'd approved, and a polished pitch to move operations to New York within the year. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. At the top of the document was a bullet point in bold, CEO relocation timeline. Urgent confirmation needed. Urgent. Everything had been urgent for years. Deals, launches, brand partnerships. But this small life blooming just miles away from him, wasn't a bullet point. It wasn't on any timeline. And that made it more urgent than anything in his inbox. He clicked out of the email and shut the laptop. 20 minutes later, he was standing in the hallway of Claire's house, quietly folding Jude's clean laundry with Lydia. I still can't believe you actually sorted socks, Lydia muttered, eyeing the matching pairs on the couch. Growth, Grant said, handing her another tiny t-shirt. She looked over her glasses at him. What's eating you? He hesitated, then sat back. My board's pushing for me to sign off on a relocation. Bigger office. More reach. It's a huge move. You sound thrilled, she deadpanned. He sighed. I used to be. You told Claire? Not yet. Lydia folded another shirt in silence, then spoke without looking at him. You know what her reaction's gonna be. I do. So why haven't you had the conversation? Grant stared at the wall. Because I'm not ready to say it out loud. You scared you'll lose her? He nodded once. And them. Lydia glanced toward the hallway where the boys' bedroom door was cracked open, faint music playing behind it. You've already been gone once, Grant, she said. The difference now is they know your name. They remember your face. If you disappear again, it won't be something they forget. It'll be something they carry. His throat tightened. I'm not disappearing. Then make sure your choices prove that. That evening, Claire walked in just after sunset, hair windswept from her shift and eyes heavy with fatigue. She smiled when she saw him and kicked off her shoes. You look like you've been thinking too hard, she said, setting her bag down. I have been, he admitted. Can we talk? She paused. Now? Yeah. Claire leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. What's going on? Grant rubbed his hands together once, grounding himself. My team wants me to move. To New York. Her expression changed instantly. Not shock, not anger. Just that stillness she used when trying not to feel something too loudly. When? She asked. Soon, but I haven't said yes. Claire's silence was like a weight pressing into the space between them. I came back to build something real with you, he continued, and the boys. But this isn't a weekend visit. I can't just pause everything else and hope it figures itself out. Her eyes were sharp now. So what? You're telling me you came back to try, but not to stay? No, he said quickly. I'm telling you I'm deciding how to stay, for good, not just as a visitor. Not as someone with one foot in the door and one in a boardroom 5 states away. Claire looked away, jaw tight. You don't get it, Grant. This isn't about choosing a zip code. It's about choosing a life. You've always been running. I can't build something with someone who's still looking over his shoulder. I'm not, he said. I'm here. She laughed, bitter. Then why does it still feel like you're preparing your exit? Grant stepped forward, voice low. Because I've spent years building something I thought would matter. And now I'm realizing it only matters if I have people to share it with. Her eyes met his. I'm not asking you to follow me, he said. I'm asking to stay here. To build here. To start over in Austin. I just have to break that to my company. Claire blinked. You'd give it up? He didn't flinch. I already have everything I need. Claire said nothing for a long moment. Then she turned, walked into the hallway, and returned with Finn's rocket drawing. The one Grant had folded neatly weeks ago. She handed it to him. He's been adding to it, every night. Grant unfolded the paper. The stick figures had grown. He was now holding Jude's hand, too. Miles had a telescope. Claire had a book. Finn had redrawn the sun, brighter, taller. They don't draw people they don't believe in, she said. He looked up at her, eyes stinging. Claire stepped closer, then stopped. I'm not ready to call this home yet, but I'm not pushing you out either. That's more than enough, he whispered. Later that night, after the boys were asleep and the dishes were put away, Claire found him on the porch, staring up at the stars. She sat beside him. Do you miss it? She asked. He didn't have to ask what she meant. I miss the control, the illusion of having all the answers. But I don't miss the emptiness when the laptop shuts and the applause dies down. Claire leaned back. This life isn't glamorous. It's everything I never knew I wanted. They sat in silence for a long time, the night wrapping around them like a quiet promise. And somewhere inside, the storm that had followed Grant for years finally began to settle. Claire's living room had never felt quieter. The boys were asleep, their rooms dim with the soft glow of nightlights shaped like stars and rocket ships. Lydia had gone to bed early, claiming a headache, but giving Grant a look that told him she just needed space from the weight of big feelings. Grant sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, holding a glass of water he hadn't touched. Claire stood at the window, half shadowed by the curtain, watching the wind stir the branches outside. They're doing a school recital next week, she said. Grant looked up. Yeah? She turned to face him. Finn's class is doing This Little Light of Mine. He has one line. He's been practicing in secret, under his blanket, like he doesn't want anyone to hear until he's ready. Grant's smile was soft. That sounds like him. Claire moved across the room and sat on the opposite end of the couch. Not close, not far. A deliberate distance. He wants you there. Grant didn't answer right away. I'll be there. She watched him. That means rescheduling your meetings. I know what your calendar looks like. Max called while you were at the grocery store yesterday. He asked if you were dodging your investors. He said that? No, she said. But I could hear it in his voice, concern, confusion. Grant set the glass down. They're used to the old me. And the new you? He looked at her. Still under construction. Claire leaned back, resting her head on the couch cushion. I used to wonder what it would be like if you came back. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when the boys were finally asleep, and the house felt too big for just me. Grant turned toward her slightly. I'd imagine you walking through the door like nothing had happened, she continued, voice softer now. You'd pick up right where we left off. We'd laugh, fight, fall back into something familiar. She paused. But when you did come back, it wasn't like that. You weren't familiar. You were someone else. And so was I. He nodded slowly. We've both changed. Claire looked at him, eyes quiet and steady. Do you think people can really rebuild something after this long? I don't know, he said honestly. But I think if we do it one choice at a time, we might not need to rebuild. We could build something new. The silence between them held that thought. Let it breathe. Then Claire stood. Come with me. He followed her down the hallway, past the boys' rooms, into the garage that had become a kind of storage shed. She flicked on the light. Dust danced in the beams. Boxes stacked high, an old stroller, a broken lamp. A bin labeled Grant. He froze. Claire pulled off the lid and stepped aside. I didn't throw it out, even when I should have. He walked slowly to the bin and crouched. Inside, neatly packed, were remnants of their old life. Photos from college, ticket stubs from a concert in Houston, a worn hoodie he'd left behind that still faintly smelled like him. And beneath all that, a folder. He pulled it out. Claire didn't speak as he opened it and found the ultrasound photo inside. The date on it was a month after he'd left. Paper clipped to it were 3 printed emails, all dated within a 2-week span, sent to his old work address. I tried, she said, barely above a whisper. I really did. He didn't respond, couldn't. His hands shook as he turned each page. There were nights I hated you, she said, and others where I told myself you were just doing what you thought was right. But mostly, I was just scared. Every day. Grant stood slowly. You were alone. She nodded. I'm sorry, he said. For every second of that. Claire took the folder from his hands and closed it. It's not about apology, Grant. It's about action. What happens next? He stepped closer, slowly. Then tell me what happens next. Claire looked up at him. The recital. That's what happens next. You show up. You sit in the second row, because the first is already claimed by over-enthusiastic parents. You clap even if Finn forgets his line, and then you stay. Not just for the big moments. For the ordinary ones, too. I can do that. She looked at him long and hard. You said before that you're not running, that this time you're choosing to stay. If that's true, then start proving it. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Grant reached out, not to touch her, but to steady the space between them. "I'll be in that second row," he said, "and every row after that, as long as you'll have me." Claire gave a quiet nod. Not a promise, but not a dismissal either. They walked back into the house together, the hallway dim and still. Claire stopped outside her room and turned to him. "Good night, Grant." "Good night, Claire." As she disappeared into the room and the door clicked shut, Grant stood alone in the hallway for a long moment. And for the first time in his adult life, he didn't feel like he was waiting for the next thing. He was already in it. Exactly where he wanted to be. The community center auditorium was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, parents shoulder to shoulder, holding up phones and nervously thumbing through printed programs. The scent of coffee and powdered donuts lingered in the air, competing with the low buzz of excited chatter. On stage, a row of paper lanterns and glittery stars hung from fishing wire, homemade decor, slightly crooked, but full of charm. Grant stood in the back, still in his pressed navy shirt and slacks, clutching a program in one hand and his phone in the other. Claire was at the front with Lydia, wrangling the boys into place with other parents. She'd barely looked at him since they'd arrived. Not cold, but distant. Focused, like she couldn't afford to be vulnerable tonight. It was Finn's night. And the only thing that mattered was that he knew someone was there for him. Grant made his way to the second row. Claire had saved him a seat. He saw the folded name card, Dad, written in Miles' careful handwriting and decorated with a rocket ship sticker. His throat tightened. He sat. On stage, the kids lined up. Tiny shoes squeaked against the hardwood floor as chairs were shuffled. Little hands tugged at collars, and one boy near the end began to cry silently before his teacher gently rubbed his back. Then Finn stepped out from the side curtain, small and steady, wearing a paper sun taped to a headband. His eyes scanned the audience like he was searching for a lighthouse in fog. When he saw Grant, he didn't smile, but he nodded. Just once. Grant nodded back. The music started, gentle piano chords, and a group of children began to sing in imperfect unison. "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Claire glanced back at Grant for the first time. He didn't look away. The verses went on, each kid stepping up to say a line into the microphone. Most mumbled. A few shouted. One froze entirely, prompting a gentle cue from a teacher in the wings. Then it was Finn's turn. He stepped forward, hands clenched into fists at his side. "My name is Finn," he said, voice shaking. "And my light is believing I can be brave." The room was quiet. Claire's breath caught. Grant's hand gripped the edge of his seat. Then Finn smiled, not big, not wide. Just enough. The audience clapped, some louder than others. Grant didn't realize his eyes were wet until he blinked and the lights blurred. The performance ended with a wave of applause. Kids bowed. Parents stood, phones flashed. Grant remained seated, his heart still lodged somewhere between his ribs. As the crowd dispersed, Claire stepped up beside him, holding Finn's jacket. She didn't speak right away. Then, "He's never said that out loud before." Grant looked at her. "He was incredible." Claire turned to him. "He did it because he knew you were watching." Grant swallowed hard. "I'll never miss something like this again." She studied him, her expression softer than it had been in days. "You say that like you already believe it." "I do." Claire glanced toward the exit. "Lydia's taking the boys home. They want to stop for ice cream." He nodded, waiting. She looked at him again. "Walk with me?" They stepped out into the night. The air was cooler now, crisp with the early tease of fall. The stars above them were faint, but they were there. Claire walked ahead a few paces, then stopped near a bench just outside the parking lot. She sat. Grant followed. "I was going to tell you not to come tonight," she said. He turned. "Why?" "Because I was scared." She exhaled, twisting the ring on her finger. "If you missed it, I knew he'd break. And I didn't want to explain why someone who said he'd stay didn't. But I showed up." "You did," she said. "And not just tonight." They sat in silence, the sounds of cars in the distance blending with the hum of a nearby vending machine. "I got a call from your assistant," Claire said suddenly. "She thought I was your secretary." Grant blinked. "Why did she call you?" "She was trying to find you. Said the board has an emergency session scheduled. Something about your vote being critical." Grant leaned back on the bench. "They can wait." "You sure about that?" "I'm more sure of this than I've ever been of anything." Claire turned to him, her eyes searching his. "This life is messy. It's not organized or predictable or headline-worthy. It's late-night fevers and forgotten school forms and crushed goldfish in the carpet, and I need to know you're not going to flinch when it gets hard." "I don't flinch anymore," he said. She nodded slowly. "Then stay, for real, not just in town. In this." Grant didn't answer with words. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the old rocket drawing Finn had given him weeks ago. He'd folded it carefully, kept it with him through every meeting, every doubt, every moment he wanted to run. He unfolded it now and held it between them. "They already gave me a place," he said. "I just needed to earn it." Claire looked down at the drawing, at the little sun, at the stick figures standing together. Then she looked up, and for the first time since he came back, she didn't hold anything back from her eyes. Not the hurt. Not the fear, but not the hope either. This time she let it show. The rain came quietly overnight, light, steady, and enough to perfume the morning air with wet leaves and warm concrete. Grant sat at the kitchen table with a half-drunk cup of coffee, and his phone turned screen down. The house was still, the boys at school, Claire finishing a shift at the library. Lydia had taken the day to help a neighbor. It was the first moment in weeks he'd had to himself in this house, and for once, it didn't feel like he was visiting. It felt like he was waiting for someone to come home. The drawing Finn gave him was now framed on the wall above the coat rack. Claire had done it, quietly. No announcement. One day it was just there, hung crooked, as if by instinct rather than precision. He looked at it now, the little rocket arcing across a sky made with crayon and imagination. A ping came from the phone. Grant flipped it over. Max. Board voted. "They're stalling without you. If you want to keep your seat, you need to video in by noon. Final call." Grant stared at the screen. Then he powered it off. Later that afternoon, Claire walked through the door, shaking rain from her umbrella. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and her cheeks were pink from the wind. "I brought chili," she said, setting down a paper bag. He smiled. "You keep feeding me like I haven't had a meal in months. You eat like you're preparing for a tech apocalypse." They shared a small laugh. She pulled out 2 containers, handed him one, then grabbed 2 spoons from the drawer. They sat at the table, knees brushing under the wood. Claire stirred her spoon slowly before glancing at him. "You didn't answer Max's call this morning." "You knew?" "He called me. Again." Grant lowered his spoon. "I didn't mean to drag you into that." "You didn't," she said. "But they're nervous. This isn't a small decision, Grant. If you're staying here, really staying, they're not just going to hand you a quiet exit." "I don't want a quiet exit," he said. "I want a meaningful one." Claire studied him. And after that, what happens next? Grant hesitated. I've been working on something. A proposal. Not for the board. For us. Her brow lifted. He pulled a folder from under the table and slid it toward her. She opened it carefully. Inside were sketches, floor plans, a draft business model. At the top, a name. The Whitaker Center. Innovation for Kids. Claire blinked. You're opening a startup for children? Sort of, he said. It's a learning space. Tech, science, art. Hands-on education for kids who don't have access to that kind of environment. We'd start in East Austin. Grow it slowly. Thought maybe Miles could teach the space camp portion. She let out a breath of disbelief. You're serious. Dead serious, he said. I'll use my own money. I've already spoken to a few educators. I wanted to tell you once I was sure it wasn't just a fantasy. Claire stared down at the papers, then looked up at him with something unreadable in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll be part of it, he said, even if it's just ideas. You know this community. You know what kids need. Claire looked down again, touched by something she wasn't ready to name. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Because I used to build things for investors, he said. Now I want to build something that would have made my mom proud, something the boys can grow up around, something that leaves a mark for the right reasons. Claire blinked, slowly. Her voice dropped to a hush. You really aren't leaving, are you? No, he said. I'm not. She smiled, small but deep. Then she reached for his hand, brushing her fingers over his knuckles. You should tell them, she said. Max, the board. Tell them the truth. I will. When? He paused. Right after I help Finn with his solar system project, and maybe walk Jude through his math homework. Priorities, she laughed, shaking her head. You're ridiculous. And finally starting to get it, he said. That night, after the boys were in bed and the rain had passed, they stood in the backyard under a patchy sky. The stars peeked through in scattered places, flickering like they were thinking it over. Claire leaned into his shoulder. You know, she murmured. The boys told Lydia that when they grow up, they want to be dads. Grant turned to her, surprised. She asked why, Claire continued, and they said, because Grant makes it look like something you'd want to be. Grant's chest tightened. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility. Claire looked up at him. Too late. You already earned it. And beneath the quiet night, they stood still. Not reaching. Not rushing, just present, exactly where they were meant to be. The sun had barely crested the trees when Grant pulled into the driveway, a to-go tray of cinnamon rolls and coffee in the passenger seat and nerves settling somewhere in his chest. Today wasn't a grand reveal. No speeches. No cameras. Just a quiet invitation that carried more weight than anything he'd ever pitched. Claire opened the door before he could knock, still in pajama pants, her hair in a messy twist, a pencil tucked behind her ear. Smells like a bribe, she said. Grant held up the tray. Call it a peace offering, and maybe a conversation starter. She stepped aside to let him in. You're early. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Claire took the tray, placed it on the kitchen counter, then turned back to him. You look like you're about to tell me you're moving to Mars. Close, he said, but slightly more realistic. She narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms loosely. Okay. Let's hear it. Grant leaned against the kitchen island, steadying himself with a breath. I want to take the boys to Seattle. Claire blinked. He continued quickly. Not permanently, just for a visit, a few days. There's an event at my old company. They're launching the educational initiative I proposed before stepping back. I helped shape the vision. They're naming one of the tech labs after my mom. There's going to be a kids' innovation tour. Hands-on robotics, design challenges, even a Lego zone. It's everything Miles has ever dreamed of. Claire stared at him, guarded. I want them to see what I used to build, Grant added. Not because I want to show off, but because I want them to understand who I was and who I'm choosing to be now. Claire sat down at the table. You want them to see your world. I want them to know they're part of it now. She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. That's a big ask. I'll cover the flights, the hotel. We'd have our own rooms. You and Lydia could come too. Or not, if you'd rather keep things simpler. But I won't go without your blessing. Claire didn't respond right away. She looked at him for a long time, then toward the hallway where the boys were still asleep. Finally, she asked, "Why now?" Grant softened. Because for the first time, I'm not afraid of them knowing who I really am. Claire's eyes welled up before she could stop them. You know, for years I used to imagine what I'd say if you ever came back. And now here you are, asking for permission to take my kids on a plane. I know it's a lot, he said gently. She looked at him. It's not that it's too much, it's just, I never thought we'd get here. A beat passed, then she nodded. Okay, Grant blinked. Really? I trust you, she said. That doesn't mean I won't panic for every second of that flight, but I trust you. He stepped forward. You could come, Claire shook her head. I want you to have this. Just you and them. You need that. Later that week at the airport, Claire stood with Lydia by the gate, arms crossed but smiling as the boys tugged at their backpacks, eyes wide with excitement. Don't lose them, Lydia muttered to Grant, half joking. I already lost 5 years, he replied quietly. I won't lose another second. Claire pulled him aside just before boarding. Jude is terrified of turbulence but won't admit it, she said. Miles will ask at least 30 science questions before takeoff. Finn pretends he's fine until he's not. Watch for the quiet. Grant nodded. Got it. She reached out and touched his chest lightly. Just be what they need. I will. When the flight took off and Austin shrank below them, Grant sat between Jude and Finn, with Miles pressed against the window, scribbling ideas into a notebook. Halfway through the air, Finn leaned his head on Grant's shoulder and whispered, Do rockets ever get scared of flying? Grant smiled, kissing the top of his head. Only when they forget, they're built to rise. Claire stood by the window that evening, back in Austin, watching the sky fade from gold to blue. She imagined them there, up in the clouds. Talking, laughing, maybe arguing over peanuts or asking the flight attendant for more apple juice. For the first time in years, the silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt like the pause before something good, something earned, something real. The auditorium in Seattle buzzed with quiet anticipation. Rows of parents, educators, tech leaders, and curious kids filled the folding chairs, all facing a sleek stage with glowing blue lights and digital displays. A banner hung overhead. Tomorrow starts with wonder. Youth Innovation Expo 2025. Grant stood just off stage, adjusting the collar of his blazer, but his eyes weren't on the crowd or the program agenda. They were on the 3 boys seated in the front row, his boys, craning their necks, pointing at the robotic arm demonstration, whispering in bursts of excitement. Jude bounced his knee impatiently. When is the Build-A-Bot challenge? Soon, Grant called softly from behind the curtain. Miles looked over his shoulder. Do we really get to program it ourselves? You'll be the engineers today. Finn sat quietly, hugging his backpack to his chest. He wore a lanyard with his name scrawled in blue marker. Finn W., Explorer badge. He caught Grant's eye. Just a flicker, a silent check-in. Grant nodded, giving him a thumbs up. Backstage, Max approached, phone in hand, looking as polished and pressed as always. Place is packed. You could still take the stage tonight instead of the VP. It'd land better with you. I'm not the headline anymore, Grant said. You built the thing, Max replied. You should be the one opening it. I built it, Grant said, eyes drifting back to the boys. But it's for them now. I don't need to prove anything. Max tilted his head. So that's it? You're done with all this? Grant turned fully. I'm just getting started, just not in the way they expect. Max looked at him for a long beat, then smiled. They look happy. They are, Grant said. For real this time. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. Grant walked out with the boys and led them to the first tech station, a 3D printing table covered in wires and tiny pieces of plastic. You've got 30 minutes, he said. Think you can make something that flies? Jude grinned, obviously. Miles had already started sketching. Finn held back, watching his brother's work before slowly rolling up his sleeves. As the program continued, Grant floated between tables, helping where he could, but mostly stepping back and letting them lead. He watched them light up with discovery, fail, adjust, try again. He watched them be kids, brilliant, messy, curious. Later, after the expo wrapped, after the handshakes and thanks and final photos, the four of them stood outside the building beneath a gray Seattle sky. A wind swept through the plaza, and Jude's hair whipped into his eyes. I want to come back next year, Jude said, holding his robot like a trophy. I want to live here, Miles added. Grant glanced at Finn, who was staring at a glass sculpture outside the building, shaped like a spiral galaxy. What about you, Finn? Finn shrugged. It was cool. Grant crouched beside him. That's it? Finn hesitated. Then, without looking up, he said, I liked showing them you were my dad. Grant's breath caught. Most of the kids just came with their moms, Finn continued. But I had you. Grant placed a hand gently on Finn's back. You'll always have me. That evening, back at the hotel suite, the boys fell asleep mid-conversation, curled in a pile on one bed, surrounded by science kits and expo souvenirs. Grant stepped onto the balcony with his phone, staring out at the skyline. He dialed. Claire answered on the second ring. Hey, he said softly. We just finished up. I saw the photos, she said. Miles was glowing. They all were. There was a pause, the kind that held more than words. I wanted to ask you something, Grant said. Okay. I've been thinking about what comes next, about what home looks like now. Claire's voice lowered. Grant, just hear me out. I don't want to make this harder than it needs to be, but I want to move back, not just be in Austin. I mean, plant roots, buy a house near you, be 5 minutes away instead of just weekends or holidays. Claire was quiet for a long moment. That's a big step. I know, but I want to build something steady, not just for the boys, for us. And it doesn't have to be anything more than what you're ready for. I just want to be close enough to earn whatever's possible. Claire's breath trembled through the line. You really mean that? I've never meant anything more. She let the silence stretch. Then finally, all right. Grant leaned against the railing, his heart settling into something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. You'll need help house hunting, she added. I was hoping you'd say that. Finn will want a yard big enough for his rockets. And Jude'll insist on a basketball hoop. Miles'll make sure it has enough outlets for his projects. And what about you? He asked, voice soft. Claire paused. I just want to feel like we're building something that doesn't disappear when life gets hard. We are, Grant said. One day at a time. And on the other end of the line, she didn't answer with a promise. She just stayed. And for him, that was enough. The house wasn't big, but it was theirs. A single-story, pale blue home tucked into a quiet street in East Austin, with a red front door, wild sunflowers leaning against the fence, and a yard big enough for backyard science experiments, water balloon fights, and slow Saturday mornings. The porch had a creaky swing Claire refused to let Grant replace, saying some things were meant to squeak. Inside, every wall bore evidence of life. Handprints in fading paint, spelling tests on the fridge, a calendar filled with music recitals, dentist appointments, and Dad-Me project nights. It was move-in day. Grant stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, unpacking a box labeled Kitchen Essentials in Miles's handwriting. The boys were outside, arguing over who got first dibs on the treehouse plans. Claire was in the bedroom, setting up the curtains she insisted had just the right kind of morning light. He looked around the space and felt it again, that quiet, humbling awe, not because of the granite counters or the fresh paint, but because this time he was here. Really here. Claire walked in, barefoot, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. She held up 2 curtain options. White linen or the ones with the tiny suns? Suns, Grant said without hesitation. Finn will think they're a message from NASA. She smirked. He already does. He watched her for a moment, still memorizing the way she moved through a room. She caught him staring and raised a brow. You're sentimental this morning. It's not every day you build a life, he said. Claire leaned against the counter, folding her arms. You built empires faster than this. Yeah, Grant replied, and none of them made me feel like this. Outside, the screen door slammed. Jude charged into the kitchen, panting. We need measuring tape. And Dad said we can cut wood today. Grant? Claire corrected without missing a beat. Jude rolled his eyes. He is Dad. Claire gave him a look, then turned to Grant, testing the moment. You good with that? Grant smiled. More than good. Jude grabbed the tape from the drawer and bolted out again. Claire's smile stayed longer this time. Later that afternoon, the sun hung low over the fence, throwing long shadows across the yard. The boys had scattered scrap wood across the grass, planning their fort like architects with wild imaginations. Grant sat on the back steps with Claire, sipping iced tea. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever miss it? She asked. What? The old life. The plane rides, the applause, the press. Grant paused, watching Jude draw blueprints in chalk on the patio. Sometimes. But it doesn't hurt to leave something behind when you know what you're running toward. Claire nodded slowly, her voice thoughtful. You used to talk about legacy like it was this mountain. Something high enough and shiny enough to prove you existed. He glanced down at her. And now? Now you're building something that doesn't need a spotlight to last. A silence settled between them, soft and steady. Inside the house, the oven dinged. Lydia had baked a pie, her peace offering for letting Grant install a new dishwasher. The scent drifted through the open window, warm and familiar. Grant shifted, pulling a folded sheet of paper from his back pocket. What's that? Claire asked. He handed it to her. It was Finn's rocket drawing. But this time, it had changed. The stick figures were taller now. Beside the family was a small house with a treehouse and a garden. The sun was still there, but now it had a face, a smile. "He keeps updating it," Grant said. "Every week, he adds more details." Claire ran her fingers over the page. "He's drawing stability." "He's drawing home," Grant replied. That night, the boys fell asleep in their new room, tangled in sheets and stories and the weight of their first day in a place that was finally theirs. Grant stood in the doorway for a long time, watching their chests rise and fall, listening to the quiet peace that had taken years to earn. Claire came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I used to think love was something that either happened or didn't," she whispered. "Something instant, something big." Grant leaned back into her touch. "And now I think love is built. One day, one decision. One bedtime story at a time." He turned to face her. "Then I want to build it. With you. Forever." She smiled, eyes glinting in the soft hallway light. "Then you'd better keep showing up." "I will." Outside, the wind stirred the trees, and the stars blinked awake in the sky above their small, new world. And for the first time, not just in a moment, not just for a weekend, but truly, completely, and quietly, they were home. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way.